Welcome to Trump Teachings, Episode 2. Here we look at the Druid deck. Here's the basic Druid deck, which costs 0 dust and actually has no class cards unlocked. The basic concept is you use Innervate and Wild Growth in order to gain a lot of mana, and you get to play your bigger minions quicker. The name of this lesson is Using Mana Efficiently, which I figured is best explained through this deck, which Druid has the most ways to manipulate mana with cards like Innervate and Wild Growth. At level 2, you unlock Starfire, which is a pretty good card. We would take out the bigger Frostwolf Warlords to put in the Starfires. Level 8, you unlock Swipe, which is an excellent card to board control. Get rid of these Razor Fins for those. And at level 10, you unlock the monstrous Ironbark Protector, at which we can get rid of a River Croc and a Shattered Sun Cleric. Shattered Sun Cleric will have fewer cards to buff, so it becomes a 1-of. And there you have it, the free Druid basic deck, which you can build off of 0 dust. Let's give it a whirl.
Victory or death! I must protect the wild.
Alright, the name of this lesson is Mana Efficiency. Oftentimes the best play of each turn is simply the play that takes the most mana. And the reason for that is rather simple. All of the cards have a mana cost associated with them, and the cards with more mana tend to be better. So if you're actually spending all the mana each turn and maximizing the usage of it, you can play more cards, and by playing more cards, you have more value, more stuff out on the board. Wild Growth is a really good card to have in the opening hand because it gives you that extra mana each turn. So I'm going to keep the Wild Growth, and I'm going to keep the Gnomish Inventor since that's a 4 cost. The plan is to spend 2 mana on Wild Growth, and then on turn 3 play the 4-drop. Wild Growth is one of those cards you really want to see in your opening hand when you're playing when you're playing any Druid, really. Now, don't rush to play cards just because you can. It would be a mistake to play Innervate into Wild Growth here, because then the following turn you would only have 3 mana, which you could cast nothing with. So you do have to plan out your Innervates to try to smooth out your mana curve. Same reasoning with the coin. Try to look forward and see how you can spend mana effectively each turn. Turn 2 Wild Growth, an excellent on-curve play. And speaking of on-curve, that's some basic lingo where playing a card on-curve means you're spending all your mana on it. If you've watched the board control basics, you would know that spending Innervate to Starfire his face would be a horrible play, because you would basically be dealing 5 damage to him, but that's mostly irrelevant for this deck. This deck is in it for the board control also. And its strength is through being able to get more mana quicker to use better cards earlier. The opponent is smart and played the Fire War Axe and didn't attack my face because he probably intends to use that Fire War Axe to board control. Alright, so always consider the play that takes the most mana as like a possible play, and you have to have a good reason not to do it, basically. So we look at it first, and it's like Innervate Stormwind Champion. You would get a 6/6 on the board. This would be a 3/5. Now there is a reason not to do the play here, because in that case, his 3/5 and his 3/2 axe would swing back at the Stormwind Champion and kill it. So that's not the best play here. You could Innervate Starfire, but that wastes 1 mana. You could Innervate Starfire Claw, but clawing the face is bad. So we bring down our mana usage level to, okay, how can we spend 5? How can we deal with this, really? Claw and Hero ability will be 3 damage plus the 2 to kill that. And then you spend the rest of the mana efficiently on this Bloodfoot
For the wild!
Hey, give me a minute!
That's kind of the general idea of where you should be at. with any play. You'll look first at what play takes the most mana and you think, oh, is that a good play? If it's not a good play, you kind of move down. You have to basically have a reason not to do the play, which takes the most mana. Here, again, you could innervate into Stormwind Champion. It has a slight problem of giving you one more mana than you can spend, so I'd like to find a way to get around that if possible. Starfire is on curve, but dealing 5 damage to that is severe overkill. This particular card wants to be taken out in one shot, otherwise you draw him cards for card advantage, which we'll get to sometime later. So really the plays are either Shattered Sun Cleric plus Bloodfin Raptor, and then you can one-shot that, or you innervate out the Stormwind Champion. I'm going to choose to do the Shattered Sun Bloodfin Raptor
the sun well.
keep the innervate for flexibility.
Hey, give me a minute.
And as always, make sure to board control. This particular deck has Stormwind Champion in it, and this card is at its best when you have several minions out already. Hopefully after you've established board control. We can see the strength of this deck because I've got 7 mana to play with, and the opponent has constantly been 2 mana behind. So here we go with this. Well, okay, so you see I immediately reached for the Stormwind Champion because that is the most mana efficient play. And then I was going to innervate and then do a hero ability. And then a 4/2 plus that gets into that. However, in this case, Starfire is just too good an answer. Does 5 damage to that, it's perfect.
Push forward.
Hey, give me a minute.
Nature will rise against you.
Also had the option to innervate out Mark of the Wild, but I like to save that as a card up my sleeve. I prefer to use the Mark of the Wild for board control instead of doing damage to the face, basically. Here we'll maximize our mana usage by playing this giant Ironbark Protector and also innervating out the Mark of the Wild, which can be used to now kill this without having this die itself.
I've got a huge guy.
So Stormwind Champion is the highest mana play. By playing the Stormwind Champion, your Shattered Sun Cleric dies to the Stormpike Commander though. So the other option is to Starfire this, but that stealing 5 damage is something with 2 health. Neither option seems particularly great. I'm gonna go with the move that takes the most mana and gets the 6/6 out. In this case, even though board control is pretty good, hitting the opponent for 6 to the face, especially since this is taunt and this will probably hit this anyways, it's worth it to hit the face there.
The gates are open.
Alright, Lord of the Arena. Now that has 5 health, perfect target for Starfire. And we can even use our mana perfectly with Starfire and Sen'jin Shieldmaster, very exciting. In some ways, a game is played best if you win the game and you've basically used all your cards, because that means you used up all your resources in order to kill your opponent. Whenever you end the game with more cards than that, then that basically means you had a much bigger lead. And in this case, by using mana efficiently, we get to kill our opponent with just the right amount, and to have constantly stayed ahead of the opponent by having more mana used than him. So spend yo mana, because oftentimes the player who spends the most mana will win the game. It's rare to be able to spend less mana to be able to beat someone's higher mana spend, although there are a few decks which specialize doing that. And more than just spending your mana, it's more of a concept of always consider the play that takes the most mana first. And if you can find a play that is better, which spends less mana, then alright, do that one. If you find yourself loving Druid, Druid is a deck that is often played in tournaments, and has presence in the high levels of Legend as well, and a deck like this is what it generally evolves to.